This is a third of a series of 3 conversations we're having tonight here at London Street Art with researchers who are in town for the Royal Geographical Society conference. And this third panel is going to be moderated by Susan Hansen from Middlesex University, who is based in London and who has been researching graffiti and street art in London for many, many years.
Many.
Thank you for taking over the chairing.
Thank you for inviting me to take over the chairing of this one. And thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to have this series of conversations. This is going to be such a great resource for hopefully a whole range of actors. I guess we should ask everybody to introduce themselves. Now I've had my introduction from Sabina. Would you like to go first, Caroline?
Thank you. So I'm Caroline Newton. I'm an architect, an urban planner, and a political scientist. And I'm currently an associate professor at the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment at TU Delft. And I mainly work on questions of spatial justice.
Great. Thank you. Danae?
Thank you. My name is Danae Santibáñez, and I'm Chilean, based in London. My background is architecture, landscape architecture, and architectural history. And my research is based in the intersection of art, architecture, and landscape.
Fascinating. Stuart?
Hi everyone, I'm Stuart Holdsworth. I'm a writer and publisher of the Inspiring City blog, which is a UK-based street art blog based on pretty much everything you'd think about in a street art blog, recording street art, writing about murals, but also very specifically learning the stories about the people behind the scene, particularly emerging artists, and speaking with them and finding out who they are.
It is really worth a read. How long have you been doing that for now?
It's been 12 years now, yes.
Wow. So it's a great archive too. A lot of us are quite interested in work over time and the kind of the history of this stuff. Our bloggers are doing a great job of, documenting what's going on. Okay, now is the exciting part where we turn to our, a key finding, not our singular key finding. It is really hard to choose just the one thing that's the most relevant, and also that's not going to be the thing that's so obvious that we're all going to say the thing, and then the people on the final panel, which is this one, are going to be like, oh. So what particular finding, Caroline, would you like to share with us?
So it's true what you said. There are so many interesting things, but for me as a planner and really interested in how design can impact spatial justice, what I find really interesting, and again, I just want to say that I'm not only looking at murals, but kind of a whole arsenal of ways that people use walls and surfaces to actually communicate. And so for me, I think the most important finding is that the city speaks to us. And as planners and as designers, we need to learn to listen. And in this case, listening is really being open to explore what is there on the walls and really try to understand. And like what Stuart, you said, who are the people that are giving us these messages?
That's a really interesting, I hate the word interesting point, in that the people that adopt the lens of, listening to walls or hearing walls or walls talking tend to have a kind of a more social interest, an interest in the conversations on walls and the sociality on walls, rather than perhaps, I do know some art historians who are more focused on the work of particular artists or particular murals, which is quite a different lens. So thank you for kind of bringing up the importance of these kind of living surfaces and listening to them. Danae, what would you like to share with us in terms of your key finding?
Yeah, I think the first one is that I think disobedience is a method. It's a method that keeps us conscious, critically analyzing the environment, what's going on in all of the surfaces. So for me, that's kind of like a key one, and I think should be used more often. The other one is that surfaces are in motion. So they're moving, they're progressing, they're changing. And that means that also like all of the kind of like limits and subjects associated of delimiting surfaces, describing them, they also should move with that. So my research is based in this performative piece of art of a Chilean artist, Lottie Rosenfeld, and she's a performer, so she does work with time, and that's how I got into that. So I will be very interested in to see how we can define surfaces in movement.
Nice point. Also, I think the thing that was interesting about the case study, the artist you're talking about, is that it's not a vertical surface she's working with primarily, is it? It's street. So it's the surface that we don't often think about when we're talking about, urban surfaces. We assume these are walls. So thank you for drawing our attention to what is beneath our feet. This is a painted floor that we're sitting on right now. Stuart, what key finding from your practice?
Well, ladies, I was thinking about this and how I might determine, a finding necessarily from my work. Because it's just you're right, it's an archive, an observation, and really a trend, I think, over a period of time. And what's the core trend that I would notice? And I think it's a shift, if you like, from individually focused art to more corporately or centrally controlled art. So I move from, the individual going out onto the street, finding a wall and doing a piece, to somebody being contacted, or a street, maybe there's a huge growth of street art festivals, for example, but also community groups that are doing work in spaces because they intend to beautify that space. Right? I think that's very much what they want to do. They want to have their own interaction, but it is controlled, and it is a central body that's doing that. So the artists themselves are responding to that particular area, and I think that shift has led to a dynamic change in terms of who becomes a street artist.
And whether they want to be called a street artist.
Well, absolutely. Some people, they might not even have any association with the cultural history that we might have. So traditionally, when I started writing, a street artist might have started in graffiti. That is not necessarily the case anymore. And street artists are coming from fine art backgrounds, abstract art, very, very different areas.
It is. And a lot of street art festivals have now pretty much become mural festivals. So in terms of the sort of work that the public identify as being street art, the mural has kind of come to stand for what was once a greater variety of, more human scale work that doesn't require a cherry picker, I guess.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing that critical observation to the table. I think I'm supposed to squeeze in very quickly a key finding of my own, but I think you've really picked up on a lot of the stuff that I would have said. I think capturing walls in motion, listening to walls, looking at trends over periods of time are all concerns that inform my work. So those of you that know my work know that I'm obsessed, like Sabina is from time to time, with photographing walls over time. Yeah, so with, I think I've been going nearly a decade now for the longest wall. And what that does, obviously, is captures the motion. It captures this kind of conversation and captures broader trends of change. My approach to that data shows this, I guess, as a conversation, because my initial training was as a conversationalist and as a methodologist. So, rather than transcribing a conversation like this one, then analysing it, if you take photographs over time and stitch those back together to compress that time, you can see the kind of the call and responses. For example, Caroline, you had some of those in your slides where people were writing over each other's work, responding to each other's work, and that's, as far as I can see, an extended conversation. Now, we should move quickly because we have 10 minutes left to the challenges part. Yes? What kind of challenge would you like to kind of talk about, and how should we resolve this?
I think it kind of links a bit to, Stuart, what you said about that you saw this trend of this street art becoming more and more organized and controlled. And actually again, from a kind of planner's perspective, I think we have been starting to over-plan. Everything is planned. Cities are over-designed. Public spaces are over-designed. And it seems like now we're also over-curating what goes on these walls. So for me, that would be really, how can we make sure that the city is still messy. You know, what makes a good city is its messiness, the fact that everybody can arrive, and especially because we're in London, what I've always find so important is that people can arrive and they can make their life here. They can experiment, they can try, they can. But if everything becomes more and more controlled, and for example, in Amsterdam, I had a student working on the fact that increasingly Amsterdam is smoothened, all the surfaces are smoothened, also the streets. If this is going to happen, then yeah, we lose what makes a city a city. We have to make sure, I think, as planners and designers, that there is place for messiness, for people to experiment and to do what they want. Not everything should be curated and decided top down.
Yeah, or it shuts down.
Yes.
Yeah, the activity in the space. Good critical points. I like that challenge. I hope we can resolve it. We need planners like you, not people building the kinds of areas where people don't intervene on walls. Danae, what challenge would you like to raise?
I was going to say funding, but it's already mentioned. So
We can mention it again. Funding is really
that's
important. We like more
one.
money.
That's one. Yes, but I think this place has inspired me to say that also collecting because of the sense of motion. I think it's like street art in general. It's like volatile. It's important to also record and document, and then the other side of it is kind of like your personal or communal curation and putting together a collection like this. I think that's another side of looking into interventions in walls or in streets that goes beyond the act itself. So I will be interested in seeing kind of like the visual side of it and going into archives and learning of the stories of walls curated by someone.
Would you call that a form of heritage, I guess?
100%, yes. Yes.
I'm glad heritage has made it in. I think we are starting to talk about heritage in terms of work on the streets as well, figuring out how to do this in a way that doesn't treat it like it's art in a museum, like Julia was saying.
Like what is happening to the Banksy work.
Well, plexiglass actually creates a micro environment where moss will grow behind it, so it does the opposite, protecting. But okay, Stuart, what challenge would you like to raise?
Well, I think linked into the earlier point, this idea of how easy it is for artists to find walls, and what the opportunities for new space to be opened up, particularly when old space has been developed or it's been taken over in some way. So where does this organic mural painting actually happen, and how easy is it? Because the old spots have gone. Because well, if you look at Shoreditch, we're here now, and it's Hackney Wick. It's completely built up. Back in the day, these were great places to go and explore and wander around, and you do have spots where you can see that. Like in London, we've got the Leek Street Tunnel, for example. We've got a lot of sort of stuff happening in other bits of the area of the city, such as Stockwell and places like that. But they're reducing quite a lot, and I think that one of the challenges is how. Because this idea about sanitization, everything's over planned, and people forget that it's these eclectic surfaces that really engage people in terms of how they live in a particular space. And I often think about this, and I think Brick Lane, for example. The reason I started blogging was Brick Lane. I walked down Brick Lane, and every time I walked, there's a new mural. I was like, wow. I'm an extrovert. I'm seeing this. I'm loving it. I'm taking a picture. This is great. Can you imagine what would happen if all those tags and all those things on Brick Lane, would anyone go there? Absolutely not. It'd completely lose its soul, and the energy shift would be palpable. In that area. But then again, I think, but then another where we have got these other spaces that are opened up, and it's controlled through street art festivals or community groups. So maybe another challenge that we have is how we work with those sort of organisations to help understand, well, what is the culture behind street art and graffiti, and more important, what stories can we tell about them? How much can we engage the local people in that?
In a
meaningful way.
Funding.
Funding helps. A slight thing. One thing I always it reminds me, I'm from the glorious north of England, and back in the day there was a mural festival in Rochdale. Rochdale has been underinvested for some time, but there was a mural festival there, and I was doing the street art tours. And I tell you what, it wasn't that people were going around these murals and people were loving the art, they were loving it, but more importantly, more interesting to me is that they were loving the buildings that they were on, and they were loving the history around it. So suddenly these people that were living in Rochdale all their life were noticing a piece of architecture which I'd pointed out based on what the muralist was trying to depict and what they might have been referencing. And things. I never knew this about Rochdale. Every single tour this was coming out.
Huh.
It's just a means of learning about their city, and I love that. I think that's where there's a real opportunity.
Real connection to place there.
Place,
as well.
absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent examples. All right, I have 3 minutes to give a final rappy example, which is going to sound like I'm just repeating you guys. I agree with the challenges raised here wholeheartedly, and I'm going to speak with my sort of more festival-y hat on, I guess. I mean, this is me as a researcher and also me as somebody who's involved in this industry. I agree that we should perhaps continue to disrupt the boundaries of what counts as street art. You know, you've kind of noted this kind of trend of street art becoming just one murally thing, and, you know, the idea that work should be in motion. So, you know, to encourage a proliferation of forms of urban mark making, in the capacity that we have to encourage it. Some of us have such capacity as planners or whatever else, other hats we might be wearing. And I wanted to end with one final example of how we might do this. You've probably heard this story, but Brad Downey, the artist, once famously accepted an offer to paint a tower block with a mural. But instead of painting the mural, he knocked on the doors of all the people who lived in this tower block and asked them what in their flats needed fixing. And he spent the money on fixing the shit that was wrong inside the building, not making the building beautiful. That's where I'd like to end. Alrighty.